Well, thank you so much for this award. It is a real privilege. I have to apologize, first of all, that I am not dressed nearly as beautifully as all of you. My excuse is that I've spent the afternoon shouting at Jeremy Hunt across the bridge. And yeah, it felt like this was a more appropriate thing to wear, to be in the House of Commons shouting at Jeremy Hunt and saying, why aren't you investing in the green economy? You know why you should do this. But it is genuinely such an honor to be with you tonight. And I just wanted to say as well about Edie. I've always loved Edie. I think that the work that they do and the information that Edie shares is fantastic. And I love them even before they gave me the award. But I love them even more after I just had a conversation with someone just out there who works with them. And forgive me if you know the story, but I was just asking them, why is Edie called Edie? And of course, Edie is called Edie because the tea lady of very long standing was called Edie, who worked there. And I just love that. You know, that is values in action. So hurrah for Edie, and thank you so much for this award. So I have to say, though, that I did feel a certain amount of consternation that a Lifetime Achievement Award suggested that my leaving Parliament is being interpreted as my retiring quietly with my carrots on the allotment. And I have to confess that isn't my plan. I still have many things that I still want to do, one of which is to continue to speak truth to power to the extent that I can about the challenges we collectively face today. And it's those challenges I want to focus on in just a few moments you've very kindly given me to speak this evening. Or in fact, what I would love to do is just to lay down 3 ways that I'd urge you as representatives of the business sector to address those 3 challenges. And the first is a recognition that if our future is to be livable, then business mustn't just adapt, it needs to lead the charge. And there is a wealth of examples of that happening already, despite the lack of a predictable regulatory framework. And so a huge debt of gratitude is owed to all those businesses, frankly, who are forging ahead and doing the right thing without necessarily having the certainty from government that no doubt would help. But business leadership in today's world, I think, has to be more than about redesigning products or about green capitalism. It has to encompass literally everything from who is on your boards, how you're financed, to your governance and ownership. It demands going beyond simply doing no harm and instead to actively doing good. The economist Kate Raworth describes this as being generous. Or to put it another way, as creating enterprise that is regenerative by design, giving back to the living systems of which we are all a part. So that means businesses being givers and creators and sharers rather than takers. And it might mean, for example, giving meaningful backing to initiatives like the Better Business Act. And an amazing 2,500 businesses have already got behind this campaign to amend Section 172 of the Companies Act. And if you don't happen to know your Companies Act off by heart, then stay with me, because Section 172 is about the duty to promote the success of a company. And in fairness, it does mention the environment, for example, and the interest of employees. But to really change the business environment for better, we need to see businesses legally responsible for benefiting workers, customers, communities, and the environment in the widest sense, as well as delivering profit. So it's a new interpretation, if you like, of fiduciary duty applied to all businesses by default, not just the option to benefit wider stakeholders beyond shareholders. And this is the future of business in a thriving economy on a thriving planet, and I urge you to create that new reality. And second, I'd love to urge you to give the future a voice in your boardrooms, and looking to Wales might provide some inspiration about how to go about doing that. The Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, which they've passed in Wales, requires public bodies there to think about the long-term impact of their decisions. And they've created the role of a Future Generations Commissioner, and they act as a guardian for our children and grandchildren and the generations who follow them. Or you've got examples like the company Faith in Nature, who's literally given nature a voice on their board, again via the role of an independent guardian, like an environmental lawyer who can be powerful advocates for nature in the decision-making process. Now, I know some degree of future-proofing will likely already be something that comes up in most boardrooms, but only by genuinely giving the future a role in the room, making space for them around the table, can you possibly fulfill the responsibilities we all have for making the future livable? And so step aside, let go of your power and some of your platforms, and instead turn the words of intergenerational justice into deeds. And that brings me to my third and final way that I hope businesses will rise to the challenges that we face together. And that is to operate with an understanding that the endless growth model, which has dominated since the 1930s, is frankly broken. It is discredited. It is defunct. It is dead. GDP is frankly a rubbish metric for measuring anything that tells us about what's valuable. You know, people becoming unhealthy can have an overall positive effect on GDP because revenue from associated healthcare boosts growth. How crazy is that? Or oil and gas extraction pushes GDP up while simultaneously pushing us closer to the precipice of climate breakdown. And even the concept of green growth rests on the assumption that you can have full and adequate decoupling of economic growth from environmental harm at the speed and scale that's required. And I want to say to you here tonight, folks, you can't. As the UN Global Assessment of Nature makes clear, the growth of the global economy, and specifically the growth of material consumption in affluent nations, is one of the major driving forces behind the deadliest ecological trends, such as there being significantly more animal and plant species now threatened with extinction than at any other time in human history. That is a frightening 1 million species. Now, pioneering business leaders like Paul Polman know this already, and he warns that the way we continue to define GDP is creating problems faster than the solutions we are implementing, and that gap is actually increasing. So you might ask, well, what should we measure instead? Well, what about well-being? Or what about levels of inequality? Or success in nature restoration? Or the number of girls learning to read around the world? Or simply how happy we all report feeling? Rebalancing economy, ecology, and ethics has now been mainstreamed from everywhere from the European Parliament to the government of New Zealand. So it's time for all of us to abandon that obsession with perpetual growth and instead become a positive and productive force, operating with a full understanding of the boundaries of our one very precious, life-giving planet. So there you have, very quickly, 3 ways to rise to the challenges that confront us all. And if we all of them take them up, and if we take them to heart and take them back to your boards and to your employees and your customers and your communities, then that might just be a lifetime achievement for us all to mark and celebrate. So thank you again so very much for this award. I really do appreciate it.